the Grey Hat Beard podcast. Hello and welcome to Grey Hat Beard episode 3. We've had some lovely feedback from people and thank you very much for those. The good news now is we are on Google Play, we are on iTunes, and we're on Spotify. So all your standard platforms are out there. If there are other ones, please drop us a note and we'll try and get on everything. We're on YouTube, we're on Facebook, we're on Twitter. We're a bit too old to be on Snapchat, so we haven't gone on there. But if you really think we need to be on Snapchat, then do let us know. We also had some feedback on the shorter episodes. People like those, but found that the very short discussion ones, there was too much of just as people getting into it, it was cutting and playing the music. So this time we're going to have two episodes to this. One will be the news and one will be the discussion. And I think on that, let's get started straight away onto the news. And Al, over to you.
So what have I been doing this week? I've been playing with model-driven apps. So building an application for a client, which is great fun, really getting into the capabilities of model-driven apps. But one of the things that is really interesting that has been released is more around the Canvas apps. So the new ability to actually integrate app insights into Canvas apps and be able to actually have your Canvas app push to app insights to get more information around usage and issues, but also to get more information around where people are, what they're doing, and how they're actually working. So that telemetry is really going to be a bit of a game changer because it will give us much more information around whether apps are working, whether they're not working, and how they're being used.
And whether the smoke alarm's going off.
Yeah, and whether the smoke alarm goes off. That's wasn't planned, but always a good alarm.
That's a good Azure alert you got going on there, Gary.
Yeah, IoT that is at its best. But yeah, I mean, I think for anybody who hasn't used App Insights, it is a very powerful tool in terms of the information that you can get to log errors and just to debug what's going on in your app. So it'll be very interesting to see how that plays out with Canvas apps. The other element that has been talked about this week in the news is the ability to actually have a test framework for Power Apps and to be able to start to build out automated tests and to be able to do that regression testing more easily, which, when it comes to DevOps scenarios, which we'll talk about a little later on, I mean, this is an absolutely key capability for us to be able to deliver tests automatically rather than having to manually go through them. So again, this is another thing that I really want to start playing with and to really start to understand what it is that it can do. And as with anything this fresh and this new, what the constraints and limitations will be as well.
And the licensing.
Oh, somebody had to mention licensing. Oh, I don't know. Who invited you to this? Needless to say, licensing will inevitably kick in. Licensing, and I think when you're talking about app insights, the costs, because obviously that's pumping the log information out to Azure, so there will be costs.
Relatively cheap license for App Insights, and the cost is pretty much the storage, so I wouldn't see a big one there. And I would have thought the Power Apps test framework would be included. It's funny, I hadn't really thought about the licensing for that one because I kind of assumed it'd be part of it anyway, but it'd certainly be worth keeping an eye on.
Yeah, and I think it'll be interesting to see how that integrates back into things like Azure Dev Ops in order to use it within your DevOps pipelines. Again, it's very fresh, but it needs to be explored, and obviously when we do find those limitations, to feed them back to Microsoft so that they can improve it.
But it's great to see the Power Platform kind of go to. Everyone talks about it being low code and no code, but to me, there's no reason why it shouldn't have testing. There's no reason why it shouldn't be able to do the things that developers should be taking for granted, and it's really making big steps towards that, which is good.
And certainly when you're thinking about enterprise level applications, the application I'm building at the moment's got a model driven app. It's great, but it's also got two Canvas apps, both of which will end up being line of business Canvas apps. So you need to have that enterprise level trust that it's going to work and that you can run updates and those are also going to work.
It's been a while since this was actually announced. I remember seeing it on a slide deck at one of the big Microsoft conferences last year, and thinking, yeah, this is going to be the game changer. I think what it's going to hopefully do as well is provide a bit of kind of that automated documentation around what a Power App actually does. If you've got the test cases there, it's much easier to understand, okay, what does it actually do, and the functionality, because it's quite difficult to look at a Power App and go, okay, what's actually going on behind the scenes, just because of the way that the designer is kind of built. You don't have that kind of looking at the full code kind of view that you'd maybe have with like a web app or something. So.
Yeah, and I think it will be interesting to see how it actually works. As you say, it was mentioned, I think probably summer last year it was first discussed, but it's only going to public preview now. So it kind of indicates that they've either had more challenges than they expected, or they've got more features in there than they had planned.
Yeah.
Don't know which one. We'll wait and see.
Cool. So Gary, what have you been up to, and what's caught your eye?
Been looking at Office 365 DSC this week. So this is a module from Microsoft. It's open source on GitHub. If you don't know of DSC, DSC stands for Desired State Configuration, which is if you're an IT pro in the admin world, you'd probably use DSC for managing environments. So what Office 365 DSC allows you to do is kind of, as it says, manage, configure, extract, monitor your tenant configuration. You can use the module to extract all of the configuration from an Office 365 tenant. So it will go through things like Exchange policies. It will go through SharePoint policies, Teams, at a really detailed level. And it pulls all that out into a configuration file, which basically describes all of your configuration. Then the idea is you can use that to monitor your environment. So you've effectively created desired state. That's what your environment is, and you want to know if any changes have been made. So you can use DSC to monitor any changes. So if someone goes in, makes a change through the admin center, then that's effectively making your environment non-compliant. Nice. You want to know about that. And DSC has different various options of being able to flag that up and say, you're no longer compliant, something's changed, or you're not compliant, change it back to what it should be, which could be painful, but it's that idea that you've got that monitoring, you know what's being changed. So as more and more things get added into Office 365, governance that's needed around that, it's a nice way.
Things get added to Office 365
all the time. Yeah. It's a good way of having that overview. So I've been playing around with that, and it's just been released, so there's a few minor issues, but generally it's looking like a really good tool for governance.
Gary, if you had multiple Office 365 tenants, so one for test, one for production, would that be a tool that you would be able to use to say, I want to take my production configuration and match my test configuration to it?
Exactly that. Yeah. There's a tool that allows you to kind of pick the configurations that you want. So do you want Exchange? Do you want Teams? You can kind of go to the level of each service. But you're right. Once you have that configuration, it's effectively a blueprint. You can then apply that to different environments and then keep them all in sync. So definitely for creating dev tenants, it's a good way of doing it.
I think it's really interesting, and ignoring the fact that you seem to be turning into an IT pro from a dev for now. But I see that there's Azure pipelines there. So is this part of a pipeline then, so you can deploy it through that?
It can be. I think its main use is through Azure Automation. So Azure Automation is it's like a desired state configuration manager. You can take these configurations, put them into Azure Automation, and just have consistency checks run every, say, 15 minutes, and you have all that reporting in there. So you can take it to that level of having a proper service that is managing your compliance and governance. I've not got to that stage yet. I'm literally just running it from my own machine. But yeah,
Nice.
there's lots of use cases for it.
Cool. What else you been up to?
So back into DevOps. So I've been looking at tools for us to be able to generate documentation from work items. So user stories and epics and features, getting information into there from documents, being able to manage all of the business requirements and development requirements all in one place, but then export that out into a document that we can give to clients so that they get a good picture of what work we're proposing and how we're going to go about it. So I've been looking at that. Anything to stop writing documentation is a good thing. Oh, no, not stop writing, reduce the effort.
But I think, and I know, I'll bring up the screen. I know you've been looking at Bravo Notes, but I think to me it's as much about making sure that where you're working with the topics, where you're doing that work, where you're putting your notes and comments, is the documentation as well. So you're not writing a document and then updating it with your code and comments there and then changing it in a completely separate system. It's about being able to do it in one and having one export from that.
Yeah, and a big part of it is trying to streamline a process. So
efficiency.
You'll go and sit down with the customer and you'll have loads of discussions, and those are your epics and your user stories. But you'd probably just go, okay, I'm going to create a Word document and I'm going to throw it all in there, and then okay, great, you've decided all of that. Now you've got to do the work. Okay, how are you going to manage doing that work? You've just got a lot of information in a Word document. We want to be working in DevOps. We want to be able to take from the business requirement and track it all the way through to, making sure we've got test cases, making sure we've got acceptance criteria, and then tracking the work that's done against those as well, like your pull requests and your code commits. And there's then a big effort to move it into DevOps.
I might wrap you up a bit early there because I think we're going to go on to talk about DevOps in a non-agile world in the discussion part. So I think we'll probably cover a lot of it there.
Yeah.
Cool. Lovely. So from my side, what have I been up to? I've been stuck with kicking off a lovely 2010 migration. It's always good to see some of those older ones get removed. So we're kicking that off, which is nice. Also been working in my trains up, lovely 3-hour trips up there, giving me plenty of time to work on. Don't want to give control. Have been working through on a search bar. So we talked a little bit about this that Gary and I worked on earlier this year about using a single page application deployed into Azure storage and using Microsoft Graph and the adaptive cards, including adaptive cards templates. So I've now published that, and working with Gary will put it out into the CPS portal, a version of that goes through. And also looking at Elios Joyf had a lovely post on using Cypress with SBFX. So I'm trying to integrate that so we can use Cypress for UI testing. So again, that end-to-end, not going to keep beating that DevOps drum, but we'll come back to looking at that as well. At the moment, it really is just the code and how to install, but I'll be putting some details on it, some screenshots coming up there as well.
Just on the 2010 migration, seems to be a common subject at the moment, 2010 migrations. People finally waking up to the fact that it will be completely unsupported come October.
Absolutely.
So,
and I think also a lot of people, as they're seeing the Windows 7 having to go to Windows 10, looking at Office versions and therefore going that this won't work with 2010 and things on there. I think, there's absolutely some good discussions to be had.
Does seem to be a high priority for those organisations who have not yet moved.
Absolutely, yeah. So definitely something worth looking at. Other things I've been looking at. I don't know if the camera will stretch this far. Let's see where the wire goes. Just about.
You might want to remove the screen. That way we'll see your
So I'll
picture.
share and show that a bit more. So I work with, I run a cub pack, and I'm trying to teach them coding. So I'll be looking at this, the MX chip from Microsoft, and doing a bit of Azure IoT. So this is currently monitoring the room temperature, which is very nice. Had a look at it, a little bit too complex for the cubs. The thought of getting them on JavaScript really wasn't going to happen. But then found this little device, the MX chip, designed by BBC. Another great British institution. This one's actually got a compass running on there, and you can code it with an iPad. You can code it through a web browser, deploy wirelessly. They can talk to each other. So we're going to be buying another 5 of these and getting the cubs coding some stuff up with that, deploying it there. Low cost, 15 quid, can connect up to other things. I've got another little box, which is when I get my electronics hat on, is full of all sorts of servos and things. So getting down into the IoT world, it's nice to get a bit of the maker hat on, a bit of the geekery, and playing around with that. So really be interested in that, which has been good because we've had a few outages in the middle of a meeting that decided to cut off last week. And check that sharing now. Microsoft Teams went down last week. Now, it's bad. Things happen. Things go down. But if it goes down because you forgot to renew a certificate and you're a multi-billion-pound company, that's really not good. And even worse, the fact, I think it went down, was it SharePoint or Yammer later last year also had an outage because they didn't have a certificate that's updated. And even if you had that issue and you happen to publish a way to do it, I'll try and find the link to it in the show notes. There is something you can do to go through your whole Azure environment, check for certificates, and send you alerts when they're about to run out. If you publish things like that and you still don't remember to do your certificate, it's really quite embarrassing. So
you could always put a reminder in your calendar as well.
Absolutely. There's so many things that can be done. It really shouldn't happen. So I realise I'm opening myself up to probably finding out my site will go down any day now, as I've forgotten to do that. But if this isn't a good reminder for you to go through, have a look through certificates, look at when they run out, and make sure you update those. It seems to have been bad a couple of weeks for Microsoft because they also had an outage.
The search.
This, but search seemed to go down. Was it yesterday or the day before? I didn't notice it, if I'm honest, but.
So I did. So I mean,
okay.
I'm not a Windows user, so I'm happy to use my Mac, and I use Spotlight on the Mac all the time. It's the search, the same as where Windows is going. If I couldn't use that for a sustained period of time, I would probably lose my mind. So I didn't have this issue, but I did in one of my Windows VMs, and I actually thought it was an insider issue at first because I run the insider build. I'm like, there's been an update and someone's broken it. And then I looked on Twitter and everyone's like, where's my search bar gone?
Yeah.
And it was like, oh, okay, it's a bit bigger than that.
but yeah, I have to make. Sorry, go on.
I was going to say that's an interesting aspect that you looked on Twitter to confirm that it was an issue, because a lot of people for the Teams outage were looking on Twitter, and they really should have been going to the health centre in 365 for that kind of stuff. So it's quite an interesting place where we all go now.
I find it quicker on Twitter usually. I usually get a quicker update from there. That there's often not things in the health centre, but maybe alerting of things another show in itself. I think we need to get on discussion fairly quickly. I know you've all got meetings coming up, so I'm just going to run through some of the events, and I'll put links to all these in the show notes. There's the Scottish Summit coming up, which I know you two are both speaking at. The Power Platform Happy Hour, which I think Al, you're speaking at.
Yeah, that's a new one for an online event for an hour. So yeah, 4 15-minute sessions.
Should be good.
Should be fun.
European Collab Summit, which we were just talking before this, that you both attending, and I didn't get things saying I didn't have it accepted, which probably means my submission somewhere when I was over in Prague trying to submit at ESBC didn't go through. So a little bit annoyed at myself, didn't check on that, but missed out on that one. But it should be a very, very good event. Very sad I won't be along to that. That's going to be my next thing. I'm going to have a look and see if I can work out a way to come along to that. Because
I would definitely recommend it. I went last year and it was absolutely brilliant. As a community event, it's huge. It's very well run.
Yeah. I will be along at Comsverse, which is coming up. Teams focused event. I know Al, you're speaking there as well. So two of us being representing, really good event. It's going to be some F1. I joined the speakers of all hands on there. There's going to be some F1 races and things going on there. So lots, really, really interesting what they're trying to do with that. And I think first year this year, but I don't think it'll be the last. I think there'll be lots of that. Collab 365 Global Con 1 coming up in April. Must get my slides together and recording for that one. And also I think about a month's time, there's Collab Talk, talking on task management. I'm hoping, Al, you can join us.
Yeah, I think that's end of February 26th, I think it is.
Cool. And that was just a tweet jam. Anyone can join in. So we'll put that in the show notes as well. I know both of us have been going in and submitting lots of talks. So hopefully we'll have some more news ones coming up.
Indeed. And just on the European Collab Summit, there is now Collab Days as well. Which a lot of the SharePoint Saturdays are now under the Collab Days banner, which is a little bit more open, a little more less restricted than SharePoint Saturday. Same ethos, but they could be any days rather than just being Saturdays as well. So that's an interesting change to look out for. If you go to, I think it's collabdays.org, but we'll put that in the link as well.
Yeah, I was going to say definitely put that in the notes, because I noticed if you search for Collab Days, I couldn't find it. So I might need to work on the SEO a little bit to get that one out, because I think I really like what they're doing. That it's good rebranding. Anyway, I think we'll wrap up. We'll put the things on there. We'll wrap up this side of the news and what we've been up to, and we'll get ready to our discussion, which I've got on my board over there. Problems with DevOps in a non-agile world.